Doja Cat V album review. Let's talk about it. How y'all doing? Welcome to Let's Talk About Music Reviews Season 11. How y'all doing? Welcome to the show. Guys, we got an album review. It's been a while since I've done an album review, and I thought instead of doing a whole bunch of track reviews how I usually do on this show, let's just do an album review, because I've been listening to this album now, guys. I've stayed up all night listening to this album. I've listened to it all day. And, now I think I'm ready to talk about this because, this is supposed to be the 80s sound album. This is supposed to have some 80s elements into it. It's supposed to have some R&B elements baked into it. It's got some pop hooks in it. It's got all kinds of stuff in it. We even got some rapping on this song, etc. And I say song, but I say the whole album. I mean, from track 1 to track 15, there's a lot of rapping. And honestly, I feel like some of the rapping is a little forced, because Jesus Christ, you're going to tell me you're going to be rapping on all of these beats? Every single one? I mean, you hear that beautiful saxophone playing in the background, and you just hear Doja Cat trying to rap on the saxophones. It's like, man, I wish you would, sing or something. I feel like that'd be 20 times goddamn better, in my opinion. Now, look, guys, I don't know what my expectations were. When I listened to Jealous Type, I thought Jealous Type was pretty alright. It wasn't anything groundbreaking in my opinion. There was this vocal run at the end that I did enjoy, but that vocal run was very cut short, and it was kind of just placed there at the very end. And also, there is a rap verse on Jealous Type, and I'll just be real with y'all. I didn't really like the Jealous Type rap verse. I don't think it was that good, in my opinion. I think I said it in the review, but I just didn't really like it. And she does this weird vocal style that I realized that this higher pitched vocal style of singing, she's going to do this voice throughout the whole entire album. And it just kind of, makes me a little frustrated, because it feels like you can sing really good on these beats. You can provide some really great value. You could actually make a really good album. Instead, we choose to put a weird filter over your voice, and we choose to, layer good vocals just only in the background. And that's one of my biggest complaints about this album, is that the vocals that are good are always way in the background. I have to turn my earbuds up all the way. I need to turn the TV up if I'm listening to this song. I need to do all of this stuff just to hear the good vocals. And, I don't understand why we're going to put good vocals in the background, but layer these terrible vocals on top of it. It just doesn't make any sense, in my opinion. The value of these songs really go down when I'm listening to terrible vocals and I'm listening to good vocals that are only in the background. And the only time that there are some decent vocals, that there are some decent stuff going on, is always at the very end, or when the track is almost over. And it just makes no sense to me why all of this stuff, all the good parts of these songs, are always to the end, or they're always cut short, or they always feel unfinished. There's a whole moment where I'm listening to a rap verse, and the rap verse, in my opinion, is really cut short. I just can't really enjoy it that much when the rap verse is only a couple of seconds, and then it feels like, the instrumental is just going off at the end. It feels unfinished. And then some of these rap verses, in my opinion, are just kind of squeezed in. I mean, it's squeezed in over here, squeezed in over here. I'm thinking we're going to start singing, and then I hear a rap verse start going. And I think one of the things that I hate about these rap verses is that they're so forced. The flow on each of these rap verses from every single song is honestly just the same. It sounds the same. The flow's the same. The flow is not really hitting, in my opinion. It just doesn't provide great value. When you're listening to the same flow over and over and over again, when you're listening to the same vocal style, the same flow style of the rap verse, when you're listening to all that stuff and you're like, God damn, we are in track 5 and you're still rapping the exact same, it just does not feel good. Doesn't sound good, nothing like that. And then you're like, okay, where's the Doja Cat singing? And it feels like Doja Cat saved her best singing for 2 tracks. Gorgeous, which, you know, she barely sings in that one, surprisingly, but the melodic vocals there are really good. And then that second song, Jealous Type, that's where I felt like all of her singing really went. The rest of the songs, I really have no idea who produced this album, but whoever produced this album, whoever did that, whoever, was producing her vocals and making them sound this terrible, it shocks me. It drives me a little insane that I've listened to so many terrible but I've listened to so many terrible vocals from Doja Cat. I'm just like, I thought Doja Cat could sing. I thought Doja Cat was one of those artists where she was multi-talented. She could rap, she could sing, she could do this, she could do that. I mean, I've even seen a fucking clip of her, doing some DJ dancing. I'm thinking Doja Cat's got all these talents. And then I listen to this album and I'm like, wow, this singing is so bad, I don't even want to listen to this album. And I have to listen to this goddamn album, It's just mind-blowing how terrible this album sounds. I mean, there's tracks from her last album that weren't even like R&B tracks. They had some hints of R&B. But those hints of R&B sounded really good. That vocal style sounded really good. And then I'd come to this album expecting more singing, expecting, these 80s and R&B elements. And this is what I get. I get shitty-ass singing. And that's kind of how it is. It's shitty-ass singing. And I thought I was losing it, but it was like, it was like when I reviewed Justin Bieber recently. He dropped a whole album unexpectedly, for a whole day. And it was like a 20-track album. And when I was listening to the album, guys, I'm on track 10. And Justin Bieber still sounds like he's singing it like a chickmunk. He's still singing in this weird-ass voice filter that makes his singing sound really bad. So, I just hate the fact that Doja Cat needs to put a terrible filter over her voice and think it sounds good. It honestly turns the whole album off for me. It turns each song that I want to listen to, it just doesn't make it enjoyable. It makes me, like, I want to lose my mind when I'm listening to this shit. And it really sucks. It really is a shame to say this, because the production of this album, we can go into the production of this album. I actually got a lot to talk about with the production, because I think one of the main reasons why I'm so, upset with this album, why I don't really enjoy this album that much, is because the production is A tier. I mean, S tier if you want to be real. This is some of the best 80s R&B / production that I've heard. There's beats that sound so good. Those keys, those synths, there's so many older nostalgic elements that are kind of used. The saxophone is placed throughout this whole entire album. These drums, they're funky. The bass is really funky. The bass has its own personality. These drums have its own personality. And the piano is going crazy. There's all these different elements that I really do enjoy. And then I listen to, the songs. I listen to a verse. I listen to a hook. And it just ruins the whole entire instrumental. And that really is a shame. These are really good instrumentals. This is like, like I said on the review. On one of the reviews I did with SZA. SZA was a feature on here. I said this is like Playboi Carti. This is like if Playboi Carti dropped a whole album and he didn't go crazy on any of the beats that he had. We all love Playboi Carti's production, and we expect Playboi Carti to do his thing on there. Well, I expect Doja Cat to do her thing on this. If you're going to do a 80s inspired album, maybe actually go fully onto it. And this is also a big problem too. I think Doja Cat really wants to be a rapper. Really, really wants to rap. And I just kind of go, well, make a rap album. Make another rap album if you want to do this. Her deluxe to her other rap album wasn't really a rap album. You know, so if you want to do a rap album, do a fucking rap album. You know, why are we doing, you know, I understand adding some rap elements, you know, maybe doing a couple of verses on some songs, but every single song, like, there's only one song where she doesn't rap over it, but, you know, and that one song she doesn't rap over it, well, she kind of just doesn't even sing on it. You know, she's letting the background vocals kind of carry her, and the parts that she is singing are not sounding good at all, so it's just kind of a waste. You know, the saxophone always being placed throughout this whole entire album, honestly, it feels disrespectful. I'm like, goddamn, turn the saxophone off, because you're not going crazy. You're not singing well. You're singing like ass. And then you're putting a saxophone in the background to make this sound good. No, it doesn't sound good. It sounds like you're singing over a good saxophone. You're shitty singing over a good saxophone. That's just kind of how it is. It's mind-blowing to me. So, all of these elements today, guys, have really fell off. And I'm really sorry to say this, but besides the song Gorgeous, besides the song Jealous Type, I think every other song off this album is goddamn awful. I even think Cards is an okay track, but Cards loves using that saxophone, and I love how Doja Cat is not even singing on the saxophone parts. You know, go crazy. Like, what are you scared of? You know, it really shows that you don't want to go all in, because your runways, you know, when you do the vocal runoffs, you only do the runoffs at the very end. You do these runoffs at the very end, and you let these runoffs be in the very, you know, background, so you can barely even hear the runoffs. So that means you're not confident in your vocal runoffs. You're not confident in your singing, and it definitely shows. You know, when you're placing a terrible filter over your voice and trying to sing really good, it just sounds really bad. It's like when I used to review in 2020 and 2021, when I used to review a lot of the trap music that was coming out. You know, a lot of the Lil Babies and the, you know, all this rap music I used to review, like, all of the time, you know. You know, when they put these shitty ass effects over their vocals, it doesn't make the song sound any better. You know, you can put all this auto-tune, you can put all this, all that, but if you're singing like shit, you're going to sound like shit. You at least need to sing a little decently. I mean, come on. It just blows my mind. It really does. Now, guys, that's my overall thoughts about this album. Now, let's get into every single track, guys. How we usually do this is that we're going to go over every single track. I'm going to give you my thoughts about every single track off the album, and then we're going to rate it out of 5. Now, this is a 15-track album at 49 minutes long. I do like how it's only 15 songs. Thank God this is not like a 30-track, you know, Playboy Cardi album, or this ain't a Morgan Wallen, like, fucking marathon that I gotta listen to. I like that it's 15 tracks. I like that. Let's get into the first track, Cards. Cards is definitely something. You know, that saxophone sounds good, but the vocal style, in my opinion, is not that good. And also the singing. The singing is not good. You know, I really wish Doja Cat would maybe, I don't know, like, actually sing instead of, like, you know, half sing. Like, it feels like we're listening to half singing throughout the whole entire track. I just don't understand it. 3 out of 5. Jealous Type will get a 4 out of 5, because I think Jealous Type is one of the best, you know, tracks off this album. You know, the singing is actually really good. There is some parts where I don't really like the vocal style, but then it kind of, you know, quickly switches, and, you know, the rap verse was overall okay. Next track number 3, Amen. This kind of reminds me of like a Michael Jackson, you know, 80s type beat. But it's kind of like if I did an 80s style Michael Jackson type song and I just completely shat all over it. You know, I completely just, you know, threw it in a trash can. You know, I threw the beat in the trash can. I threw my vocals in the trash can. She does this weird, like, deep voice effect that just sounds terrible in my opinion. The singing, I don't even know if I can even call it singing. The singing is just goddamn awful in my opinion. Amen's gonna get like a 2 out of 5. Couples Therapy is the next track. I'm gonna need therapy after listening to this goddamn album, because what the fuck am I listening to? You know, couples therapy. Maybe this is going to be like an R&B track, or, you know, maybe it's going to be a deep emotional track. No, because the vocals in the beginning are terrible, and then she starts rapping. She starts just randomly rapping, and it's placed so badly that I'm just like, what the fuck am I listening to? The flow is bad. The flow sounds terrible. Mind-blowing me. You know, I'm on track 4, and this is already what we're getting. Oh, and by the way, Amen has a rap verse too. And that rap verse is terrible too. Couples Therapy is going to get like a 2 out of 5. Now, I will say this for track 5, Gorgeous. You know, this track was pretty okay. You know, I like the beginning. You know, I like the flow of the singing. The melodic vocals are really good on this track. And honestly, I listen to Gorgeous and I go, where's the rest of this type of singing? You know, where the fuck is the rest of this, you know, good singing? Why did we only put all of our singing efforts on Gorgeous, and then the rest of these tracks, we just fuck off? You know, we just don't care. You know, we're just gonna sing terribly and call it a day. I mean, it makes no sense. Gorgeous is gonna get like, it'll get a 4 out of 5. Stranger. I fucking hate this song. I think this might be one of the worst Doja Cat songs I've ever heard in my life. I'd rather put a gun to my head than fucking listen to this song more than 5 times. And I did. You know, I stayed up all night listening to this shit. I stayed up all night listening to Stranger. And I was completely, you know, shocked. You know, I had to keep replaying this because I was like, is this real? Am I really listening to a song? Did somebody actually make this? Did you actually, you know, go, hey guys, what do y'all think about my new song, Stranger? You know, who produced this? Whoever produced this song should be fired. You should fire them because they suck ass. I mean, holy shit. Stranger. Terrible singing. Terrible rapping. And she copy and paste her own rap verse throughout the whole entire song. So we get to hear this terrible rap verse multiple times. Why the fuck do I want to listen to this terrible rap verse multiple times? Can you just slit my wrist already? Can you already put a gun to my ear and kill me? Because it just makes no sense. Stranger's going to get like a 2 out of 5. All Mine is the next one. You know, All Mine, you know, I'm thinking maybe this is an R&B track. Maybe this is finally, Doja Cat is going to make a good song. I don't even know why I even had any effort. I mean, guys, by this time, when I'm on the 7th track of the album, I'm already done. You know, I'm already given up on this shit. You know, All Mine is pretty bad. I mean, like, you have that beginning verse. You have that beginning hook. That just sounds bad. The vocal style's not good. The high-pitched vocals are not hitting, in my opinion. I mean, it is just god-awful to listen to. Like, 1 out of 5. Take Me Dancing, featuring SZA. You know, thank God SZA was on this song. Because if SZA was not on this song, I might give this song like a 0 out of 5. But I can't, because SZA actually did her thing on here. SZA had a pretty good verse. And then when Doja Cat tried to sing, you know, it's that typical high-pitched chick-monk vocals laced with some good vocals in the background, but we're going to layer bad vocals on top of it. We're going to have a hook that sucks. We're going to put the saxophone at the end of the hook. I was getting pissed off when I kept hearing this saxophone, because you don't deserve to sing over a saxophone if you're not even going to sing, if you're not even going to put any effort into the singing. Why the fuck is there a saxophone? Turn it off. Alright, you're just teasing me. You're teasing me for a good song that you're not going to give me a good song. I mean, goddamn. You know, thank God SZA was on here, but Doja Cat's probably one of the worst vocal performances in my life. I mean, I've listened to a lot of bad songs. You know, I used to review Tom McDonald. You know, I used to review, I mean, this year, I've reviewed some terrible-ass pop music, but I'm taking that shit way over this song. I mean, goddamn. Take Me Dancing is gonna get like a 2 out of 5. Lip Stain. Yeah. This track right here. I really lost faith. I really did. We're on track 9. And the bad run of songs just keeps continuing. It's kind of surprising, in my opinion, how I listen to such a shitty song like Take Me Dancing, and then we go to Lip Stain, and I'm thinking, man, can Lip Stain actually be a good song? And no, it's not. It's really not, guys. It's just so bad, and I just don't understand how we produce songs that sound this terrible and we want to put it out. I'd be embarrassed. I really would. I'd be embarrassed if I put out a group of songs that sounded like this. This whole album is like if you took the 80s and you ran the 80s through a goddamn, like a shredder. You put it through a shredder. You put the 80s, the whole genre, into a damn shredder. And you also pray to the goddamn devil. Alright, you made a deal with the devil for your 80s type song, your album, and this is what you get. Jesus Christ. Lip Stain. Bad verse, a bad hook. The instrumental just, I don't know what the hell, I don't know what we're doing. And then Silly Fun is track 10. And Silly Fun might be one of the worst Doja Cat songs I've heard in my life. Like, this beat sounds bad. I don't even like the beat that much because it feels too echoey. The mixing on the beat is so ass. And then you have these, like, really half-ass singing vocals that sound so rushed. And, it feels like Doja Cat's not even singing. It feels like she's just talking. And she's kind of using the background vocals to help out her talking. Jesus. And then Acts of Service. Now, I was looking at the comments, and people were saying this is a chill version of the Agora Hill song, from her last album. Even though that other song is probably one of the most freakiest sexual songs I've ever heard in my goddamn life, I'm taking that song way over Acts of Service. Acts of Service is acts of fucking ass, because the hook is terrible, by the way. You can put a saxophone and try to make it sound good, but you just sound terrible over this saxophone, by the way. And then you just have verses that just feel the same. It's the same flow as the hook. And then there's points where she just kind of stops even doing anything and just kind of lets the beat play out. What are we doing? Did you even try making this song? 2 out of 5. Make It Up. Again, Make It Up. I don't even know what to say. Make It Up is just ass. That's all I have to say about that. 1 out of 5. One More Time. Guys, I was really surprised when I heard One More Time. One More Time is trying to do this, like rock style, like I guess an 80s rock hodgepodge thing. It's just a bunch of hodgepodge of fucking ass, because the hook is terrible, the verses are terrible in my opinion, and I just hear this song and it just doesn't sound good. This is like, honestly, this is like a 2 out of 5. One More Time, or I don't even know, Happy. I'm not happy listening to this damn album. This album makes me pissed off. This album makes me upset. I just don't understand how we can put out, 15 tracks of ass and call it a day. It just makes no sense to me. 1 out of 5. And then Comeback. Comeback is just bad. I mean, Comeback, I'm thinking this is going to be a good final track to end off the album. And then I listen to Comeback, and it just sounds bad. The hook is terrible. The flow of the hook is terrible. Everything about this song is terrible. It just makes no sense. Overall, guys, when we talk about Doja Cat v. this is supposed to be like an 80s inspired pop album. No. I think this is how you do the 80s wrong. I think this is how you do the 80s unjust. I think this is how you make the 80s sound terrible. Now, look, this might be for you. You might like the higher pitched vocals that Doja Cat is doing. You might like this style. But I'm going to just be real, guys. I've heard Doja Cat sing better than this. I've heard her rap better than this. I've heard her, flow better than this. I've heard so much better music from her that this just feels like a step back. This feels like we don't even care. It just feels like that. Guys, overall, I'm going to be giving this album a 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10, guys. What y'all think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I don't know. Let me know. Guys, if you're on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast at, make sure you follow, turn on notifications, guys. We're dropping new content every single day. And I'll see y'all later. Have a good one. Yeah. Bye. I can't believe I subjected myself to this album. I was excited for this album, by the way. I really wanted to listen to this album. I got, right after I watched Thursday Night Football, I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm staying up, I'm ready to stay up all night. I'm ready to listen to this album. I'm ready to get some reviews done. And then I was heavily disappointed. Alright, guys. Bye.